And since I'm recording it, the Zoom will generate a link later to me, and I will share that out with everybody. That way, if you want to go back and view this at any time or share it with any of your friends, anything like that, you guys can rewatch this meeting at any time. So, Josh, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here, and thank you, Hannah, for extending me the opportunity to share with this group. Um, I'm going to share just some general resources that I think are helpful for beginning farmers and ranchers, small scale producers, and some of this you may be familiar with, and some of it you may not be. And so, certainly, please reach out and as we go through the presentation this morning, interject in the chat, raise your hand, whatever you need to do to interject and ask a question, and we can address those as we go, and then we'll have some time for some question and answer at the end of my slides as well. But please, if something strikes you and you wanna stop and talk about that, please feel free to do that. I would love to, as we get started, I'll just jump right in, but I would love to hear a little bit about each of you if you're willing to share. So if you're willing to maybe type in um, maybe like your first name and then what you're currently doing. Like, are you currently growing anything, vegetables, flowers? Are you raising livestock? Maybe how long you've been doing it. So just a sentence or two describing your current situation, what you're doing would be really helpful for me as I kind of frame the conversation this morning. So please take a second to do that, and I'll jump right in as you're doing that. As you're doing that, I just want to kind of set some definitions and terminologies. As the beginning farmer and rancher extension program specialist here at Oklahoma State University, I spent the last year or so really trying to understand what we mean by beginning farmer and rancher, and trying to help translate that to other people. And so as we talk about this term beginning, you'll also hear people talk about the term young, and then we'll talk about small farmer. And so I'll define some of those, but beginning farmer and rancher has nothing to do with age. It actually has everything to do with your experience level, the length of time or tenure that you've been operating a farm or ranch. And so if we go to the USDA definition, which is the United States Department of Agriculture, their definition for a farm or ranch um, operation that is operated by a beginning producer is anyone that has less than 10 years of operating experience on that farm or ranch. And when you start to think about eligibility criteria for some of the programs that are out there, programs at the federal level specifically, you will see this as kind of the defining criteria for that. So I love some of the stuff that's been put in the chat. It looks like we have uh, folks growing garden vegetables and fruit trees since 2020. An herbalist growing herbs and veggies and has chickens, goats, meat goats, more vegetables, raised beds, um, more veggies, goats, chickens. I love it. Um, an orchard, cattle, 10 acres, hayfield. So we've got a good group with a diverse kind of diversified mix of vegetables and herbs and flowers and livestock. And so I love that. And I think that's probably the case for most small scale producers, most beginning farmers and ranchers, is we're going to have smaller land bases than, maybe traditional agricultural production. We're going to have maybe more diverse operations where we're doing multiple things. I see beekeeping, um, aquaponics. Very good. Very good. So thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate that. That helps me kind of frame and understand where we're going to go with today's conversation. A few other things I'd like to share just as we set the stage for this morning is understanding um, kind of where Oklahoma is positioned in terms of the U.S. as a whole when it comes to our farmers and ranchers. And so if we look at the U.S. as a whole, about 1/3 of our producers across the nation would be considered beginning farmers or ranchers. What you might find interesting about that, though, is that the average age of a beginning farmer or rancher in the United States is 47.1 years. So this idea of beginning farmers and ranchers being exclusively young people is something that you should get out of your mind, because most of our beginning farmers and ranchers are coming at it as a maybe a midlife or a second or third career transition type of thing. They're inheriting property as maybe as family members have passed away, and so they're not necessarily young people. 9% of all producers in the U.S. are under age 35, and about 41 of those, 41% of all of our beginning producers, those 3.37 million, are female. So about 41% female. Here in Oklahoma, we actually have more beginning farmers and ranchers than the national average, about 2% more. And our average age for a producer is just a little bit younger than the national average, which is about 58 or 59. Our average is about 57. We have a slightly higher number of younger producers and a slightly higher number of female producers in the state. So Oklahoma is certainly an interesting case. We have some really bright opportunities in terms of supporting the work of younger beginning producers here in Oklahoma. One of the first questions that I think I often get when I'm dealing with a new producer is how do I even get started? And so today, as I go through the session, one of the things you'll see in my slides is that there will be like kind of transition slides that are kind of like a question or like a prompt. It's kind of my attempt to guide us through some thought exercises as we think about our operations, no matter where we are. I saw that some people had been at this for about 8 years. Some people are just getting started, others maybe 2 or 3 years. So we're all kind of on that spectrum of 10 years or less, but at different points in that process. And beginning farmers and ranchers as a whole face a lot of unique risks and challenges in that first 10 years. There's a lot of capital expenses. Potentially, there's a lot of learning curve. And so it's a really tough kind of uphill climb the first few years of getting an operation established and getting it stabilized. And so we'll go through some of the questions that I often ask people to think about as I'm kind of counseling them as a beginning farmer or rancher. But before we do that, one of the first places that I think is important to start is this how to start a farm question. The USDA has created a web page. If you go to farmers.gov, you'll find this, or you can scan that QR code there. But they have a web page that kind of walks you through what they think are kind of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps of establishing a farm. And rightfully so, I think they start with this idea of planning your operation. So this would involve things like goal setting, developing a business plan, understanding your potential customer base, really having a solid plan before you walk into a USDA service center and ask for financial support or anything like that. And then the next step would be to actually engage with your service center. So every county has a USDA service center, has an extension office that can support you with some of these with these needs. And then that's when they suggest that you start to think about funding. And I think a lot of us, we jump in head first with our energy and our excitement for our farm or ranch operation, and we want to start with where are we going to get the funding first. And we will talk about loans, we'll talk about grant opportunities. I've helped many beginning farmers and ranchers access grants to get started, but it is important, and it will really behoove you to think about doing your planning first, and also getting to know your service center, your extension service, and the resources that are there before you jump into trying to get capital or grants or things like that. From there, there's resources for building your business. And so there's things that can support you, like different services and programs that they have. There's marketing support. So where are you going to sell your products? What are opportunities to diversify your market? And then there's sustainability, kind of long-term maintenance type things. And so that's kind of the process that the USDA sees, and as they think about how to guide beginning farmers and ranchers. And every state has a USDA coordinator for beginning farmer and rancher efforts. And so here in Oklahoma, Mr. Cleon Bradford, I believe he's out of the Broken Arrow area. He covers the whole state, but I believe he lives in the Tulsa metro. He is the contact. And so any kind of federal level programming questions for beginning farmers and ranchers, he is kind of the person to contact for that. At OSU, the program that I oversee, We are directly supporting beginning farmers and ranchers through an educative kind of perspective. We're helping them connect to the various resources, the various programs that we have across the state, both at the federal level, and then at the state level, and even at the local and community level. And so that's kind of what our program does. If you go to the main OSU Extension webpage, which is extension.okstate.edu, and then at the top there's a program and services banner. Click on that, and then there's an alphabetical list of programs. And under B's, Beginning Farmer and Rancher, you'll find our web page. And there's a lot of great resources on our webpage. If you scroll down from there, you'll see kind of like a rolling YouTube video playlist. This one here happens to be an example of somebody talking about the FSA, the Farm Service Administration, USDA loan opportunities for beginning farmers and ranchers. And then over here on the left-hand side, you'll see an orange tab that kind of asks you to sign up for our newsletter. And that's one thing I would encourage you to do. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But I would encourage you to sign up for our Beginning Farmer and Rancher newsletter if you are interested in doing that. And I'll talk to you about some of the reasons and benefits of that in a minute. Further down on our webpage, we have some of our growing list of resources. We have some new ones that I need to add to here, but one of my jobs is to go through our OSU fact sheets and to identify areas where more content, more information is needed, and to start to work with experts that we have across our institution to build out new resources that support beginning farmers and ranchers. And so we have a number of new fact sheets actually that are being put out. We have one on selling opportunities for selling wholesale through food hubs. We are updating this one on funding for small scale farms. That's going to be updated and ready to go in the next month or so. A number of other things that you'll see. So watch for those. We also have some online classes. If you're not familiar with those, I would encourage you to check those out. You can go to uh, learn.extension.okstate.edu or just a basic Google search for OSU Extension online classes. Hannah can help you access those. And you'll find a great list, but there's several that are specific to, I think, beginning farmers and ranchers and small scale producers. So we've got everything from some basic financial record keeping. We have our market gardening series, which is like a 5 or 6 course series on everything from soil management to cool and warm season crops, fruit production, irrigation, etc. And then we have some livestock ones. We have an introduction to beef cattle nutrition, an introduction to beekeeping. We have a backyard chickens course, several that aren't actually even listed here. And then we have kind of a rolling list of events that are kind of perennial things that we offer, everything from our cow-calf boot camp, our women in ag conference, our sheep and meat goat camp that we do every year. And so a number of great um, learning opportunities that might give you a little more substantial kind of intensive opportunity for learning specifically about something that you might have an interest in. This is the Beginning Farm and Ranch Digest that I've established, and it is a periodic, usually monthly, e-newsletter that comes out, and it's a very short newsletter. We don't, I don't spam people with information, but it just has a few things. It'll be a quick list of upcoming programs that are going on around the state that have to do with topics that beginning farmers and ranchers might find helpful. There also will be a section that highlights maybe a specific resource, such as a video recording of a past webinar on a specific topic or a new fact sheet, information on a timely grant opportunity, things like that. And so we take that as just a way to get more information out there. Certainly, it's important to stay connected locally at your county level with your extension office because they're going to give you more local emphasis on things and programs that are going on. But this is just a nice kind of generic statewide opportunity to learn about things that are going on across the state. And you can do that by going to that main OSU Extension Beginning Farmer and Rancher webpage, clicking on that orange tab on the front page that says sign up for our newsletter, and it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And when you get there, there's just a few things that are required. Most of it's optional, but we need to know your name and the county of residence and your email. And that's really all I have to get you registered for the newsletter. There is an opportunity, though, for you to fill out a little more information. Like if you tell us um, what you're interested in learning about, if you tell us what your what your concerns are in terms of troubles that you're having on your farm or ranch operation, then it helps me kind of build a little bit of a needs assessment for understanding where across the state certain issues might be helpful in terms of doing programming. And so would appreciate any of you that are willing to go ahead and sign up for that. Um, just a few examples of some of our fact sheets just to show you that we have a lot of great resources. Um, we have this guide, which is also being updated. You can't really see that on my screen here, but you'll see it the picture there in front of you. It's a really helpful resource. It's pretty comprehensive. It's a actual guidebook that walks you through all sorts of things, everything from what you need to know about um, land purchases to crop insurance to anything and everything in between, farm tax um, write-offs and things like that. And so it's a great comprehensive resource that I encourage you to check out. And we update periodically. It's due for an update right now, and we're currently working on that. And then this other one here, which we'll talk about later, is also going through an update. But it is funding for small scale farms, tips for grants and loan proposals. This one in the updated version will do a really nice job of talking about some of the opportunities that small scale producers can take advantage of. One that I often highlight, and I'll talk specifically about in a little bit, is the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry Ag Enhancement and Diversification Grant Program. They have several categories. One is specifically for beginning farmers and ranchers, small scale producers, and veterans. And so we'll talk about some of that in just a minute. Like I said, we're constantly updating our fact sheet resources for beginning farmers and ranchers. So these are just two examples of brand new fact sheets that we've put together in the last year. This one here is getting started with the USDA Farm Service Agency. So it's just kind of like a step-by-step guide for how to engage with your local farm service agency, why, what would you would benefit from in terms of engaging with them, how to go about that process, what documents they would need to work with you. And so if you're not familiar with the FSA, I would encourage you to look into that. Hannah can give you some information about what they do, but essentially they are the front door to the U.S. Department of Agriculture in terms of all the programs and the different departments that are within the USDA. So any of the funding in the form of grants is going to come through the Farm Service Agency most likely in terms of loans and not necessarily grants specifically. I said grants, but I meant loans. And so a lot of their loan programs for beginning producers are going to come right through the FSA, and you have to have records established with the FSA to be eligible for any of the USDA support programs. Another resource is this Food Hubs fact sheet. It talks about like food hubs from the perspective of like the little farmers hubs that you see are popping up around the state, like little grocery store markets that operate as like a farmer's market, where the farmers aren't necessarily there selling their produce, but it's kind of on consignment or on some sort of share. And then also the wholesale models for food hubs where somebody is actually buying up produce from producers and aggregating it. And we have a few of those around the state as well. This is a really great opportunity for small scale producers who are maybe not quite at the scale or don't have the capacity through their own labor and things to really get out and knock on doors and market to restaurants and to do a lot of those types of things, but they want to access, they have enough produce to access those markets. And so food hubs kind of are a way to diversify and broaden your marketing and your sales channels beyond just a traditional selling at farmers market or selling to friends and family and things like that. There's lots of resources. This is an organization that I've been working with a little bit. They're called the Oklahoma Local Ag Collaborative. They have a resource page that aggregates a lot of the different agencies' page information across the state. And so I do like to bring people attention to this. They have information from ODAFF and from OSU Extension and from Langston and from a lot of the agricultural support agencies, the USDA, all housed in one kind of web page. And so rather than having to do a lot of searching all over the internet, they aggregate it kind of by topic. And I think it's a really helpful resource for folks here in Oklahoma that are looking to access some more information. This is a website, it's a USDA website that's managed by the University of Minnesota Cooperative Extension, and it's called farmanswers.org. And this is one that I really, really enjoy and I think is really helpful for beginning producers. There's a lot of stuff on here, but there's a library of resources. There's a podcast page that has various podcasts that small scale beginning farmers and ranchers might find interesting. There is a page that highlights all of the grant projects that the USDA has ever funded for beginning farmers and ranchers and kind of shows what they did and what the impacts of that were. And if you're ever looking at, if you work for an organization that supports agriculture in any way, a community organization, you're eligible for these types of grant projects. And so it's a good way to get some information and some resources about what was funded and what might be successful. But the favorite tool of mine is this toolbox resource, which will take you to a page that looks something like this. And you can scroll through and there's all of these different resources on things like direct marketing and organic farming, farm financial management, farmland access, and business planning, etc. And so let's say you clicked on something like this business planning one. Um, there are a lot of great resources under each of these different toolboxes. And one of those I'll talk to you about in a minute. It's a resource called Ag Plan. But this business planning toolbox, I think, is really important because if you as a uh, farmer or rancher are going to ever want to access a grant, you ever want to access loan funding, um, a line of credit, any of those types of things, you need to have a basic business plan template in place. And I think that's sometimes a daunting or overwhelming thing for many people as they're getting started, or maybe they've gotten started, but they never really put a business plan together, and you're kind of commingling, your personal life and farm and ranch stuff, and it's a little bit messy. And sometimes just stepping back and putting a plan together can really help you get a better understanding of your situation and how to move forward and make things improve. And so I'll talk to you about that in just a minute. Another thing I'd like to bring up is this Oklahoma ag tax exemption. I think there's often confusion about what this is and what it means. When I worked at a county extension office in Oklahoma City, we often got people calling our office thinking that we offered this ag tax exemption through the extension office. We do not. Um, and then we would also get some confusion, people thinking that the farm track number, which is what the FSA is, they're establishing essentially a farm and ranch identification number for you for federal programs, that this was the same as that. It's not. So there's the Farm Service Administration's um, records that you establish, which is, I like to tell people, if you have to have a social security number to work and to have a job and to have, to be recognized for federal tax purposes, if you're going to establish your farm or ranch as eligible for federal programs, for grants and things like that, you have to essentially get a federal ID number for your farm. And so that's what the FSA number is. This allows you to, this Oklahoma ag tax exemption is what allows you to not have to pay taxes on certain business expenses related to your farm or ranch. And so it's a completely separate thing. You can scan your QR code here and it'll take you there. You do need to show that you are trying to run an actual business in the sense that you're trying to have some sort of sales, you've got some sort of money flowing in and out of your operation. And so they will require that you do a basic 3-year business plan projection. It's a one-page document, very, very simple. But if you use some of the resources, which I'll show you in just a minute, it will be very easy to complete this document or other documents that you would need to go and try to seek funding. So I just bring this up to make you aware that it's a separate thing, and we can talk in more depth about that if there are questions. One of the resources that I want to point out that you can find with a quick Google search, or you can find it under that business planning toolbox page on the farmanswers.org website, is this tool called Ag Plan. This is the easiest, most effective resource that I know of for helping somebody to quickly develop a good functional business plan for their operation. So the way it works is you can go to the ag plan page. You can create a login if you'd like, and then it will allow you to pick from different templates. So you can pick like an agritourism template or an organic farm template. There's a whole number of those. So you pick one, and once you've identified your template, I clicked on agritourism here. It actually has a fully functioning business plan, a real business plan, three examples in this case of real business plans that you can toggle between. So you can see here I'm on Downey's farm, a you pick pumpkin and corn maze, and I can go section by section through the business plan. So I'm on the business summary here, and it will actually show me what these real business plans had in those sections. And then I can come in and I could copy and paste into this text box something, or I can just type my own information in. But I have an example here of what a real business plan had, a basic business plan. I can use that to guide me as I'm thinking through how to go through the development. But use the resources and the tools that are available to you. If you're using artificial intelligence and chat GPT and things like that, you could say, here's a little bit of information about me and my farm and my business. Create a short summary, and you can drop it into this box and you move on to the next section. What I love about this plan, this ag plan tool, is that it stores all of your progress, and you can actually share it with other people who can come in and in real time can look at it, can make comments, can edit, just like a shared Word document or something. But when you're ready to complete it, you click the save button, and it aggregates it into a really nice formatted, polished PDF for you that you can take with you. And so it's a helpful tool for helping you get started with your business plan. And I encourage you to look at that if that's something that you're trying to do. Um, I'm going to kind of move kind of fast through some of these things. And so please do stop me if you have questions. But I told you at the beginning that I often work through various sets of questions when I'm working with a producer for the first time. And one of those is, I ask them some questions about their land, if they already have land or if they're looking to acquire land. We talk through some of what their needs are. And so one of the questions you should ask yourself is, where is your land? What is its potential? And that seems like a basic question, but what I mean by that is like, do you have a strong understanding of the value of your land for certain types of production? Do you understand the limitations and the challenges that you're going to face with your land? Because especially if you have the opportunity to purchase land from the outset, thinking through some of that at the beginning can really set you up for success long term. Whereas, oftentimes we're left having to kind of muddle through and struggle through some of the challenges or shortfalls of the land that we have access to. So when it comes to selecting land or knowing the value of your land, one of the places you could go is our Oklahoma Land Values webpage. This QR code will take you there. But our OSU Extension Ag Econ team has a lot of great resources that will help you understand the values of your land by county, planning for like a lease agreement if you're going to be trying to lease land or things of that nature. And so that's a great resource I would encourage you to check out. I also think it's important to understand your land from a long-term kind of climate perspective in terms of understanding what kind of rainfall you're going to get, understanding how water moves across your property, understanding all of those types of kind of topographical features and things. And so a great resource that you should make sure you are aware of is our Oklahoma Mesonet, which is going to give you historic rainfall information and also real-time rainfall information. So you can look at this for everything from, what is your annual precipitation to what are your soil types and soil qualities. And then you can get real-time information on things like what soil temperature is, how much soil moisture you have. So as you're making decisions about seeding and about planting, you have some informed decisions that you can make. And so that's just one resource that I think you should be aware of. There are some other tools out there. The USDA has a tool called the Web Soil Survey. And if you're not familiar with this, it's an older website. It's a little bit clunky to figure out how to navigate, but once you get a feel for it, it's a really cool tool because there are all sorts of different elements to this web soil survey tool that you can play with, and it's all historic data with different layers that you can select. So you can look at like you can look at elevation, you can look at how water moves across a given property. And so you just pull up the map and almost like a Google Earth type of feature, you zoom in on your property and you can set a boundary and then it will tell you things about your property. Um, Things like what the predominant soil type is, and then it'll give you some information on that, like the overall kind of productivity of that soil type for different types of agricultural production, what the limitations of that might be. So the USDA Web Soil Survey is a great tool for evaluating land before you buy it, but it can also be a tool for helping you understand, um, some of the nuances of a given piece of property that you already have and you're trying to work with. The University of Missouri also has an ag site assessment tool. I haven't played with it a ton, but these are some screen grabs from that and just an example of another tool that you might want to play with. And so if you're looking at wanting to do some ag site assessment and learn how to kind of think through how you might evaluate a property for its agricultural productivity, that's a good resource to look at. One of the things that you should always think about, whether it's new property you're buying or you're thinking about the long-term opportunity in the place that you find yourself, is what are the infrastructure needs? Fencing, water, utilities, those types of things. And that's going to be, for many of us, some of our biggest um, limiting factors in terms of what we can do. Is, do we have access to water? Do we have access to, utilities? Um, are we going to be able to cost effectively fence a property? Fencing is really, really expensive and can cost a lot if you're having to build it from scratch. And so, um, drilling a well can also be very expensive. And so those are some things that you should think about and should be planning for as you get into any sort of agricultural land. The next question I often ask people to think through is, what are their goals? What are they hoping to achieve with the work that they're doing? And the reason I think goal setting is important and really, I would say even critical for any farm or ranch operation, whether you're trying to make a lot of money or you're just hobby farming, it's important to think about the the goals that you have, because if you don't have a goal, it's hard to know where you're going. But also, more so than any other kind of activity, business, farming, I think involves the nuance of family and relationships with friends and family, in a way that nothing else does. Um, Give me just a moment here. Okay. And so I think that some examples of what that might look like is just taking some time to really reflect and from the outset about what your purpose is with what you're doing. Is it, hey, I'm going to raise 50 head of cattle by year two? Is it, I'm going to plant 20 acres of hay? Is it, I hope to generate $10,000 in annual income? Whatever those goals are fine, but you should really be clear about that and put those on paper and make sure that you're communicating those with the folks that have, that are stakeholders and have a shared interest in what you're doing. So one of the resources that I share with people, there are many different goal setting worksheets and resources out there, but this is a SMART goal setting worksheet that we have through OSU Extension. That QR code here will take you there. Um, and so if you want to follow that QR code there, you'll be able to get to that page. Um, it's just a nice little tool that will help you work through that with, kind of some columns for helping you walk through specific elements of that goal setting exercise. And at the end of it, if you follow the goal setting worksheet, you'll have kind of some SMART goals and some really practical ways to think about your operation. The next question that I ask people to think about is, your specific enterprises. And when I say enterprise, what I mean by that is like think about this as like the individual units within your farm or ranch business. So many of you mentioned that you do bees or you do vegetables or you do goats. Um, you have flowers, and so each of those would be an individual enterprise. The money or the products that you get from your goats are going to be different than the income and the products that you get from a vegetable patch. And so each of those are their own enterprises. And as we think about those individually, it helps us to really understand what it's going to take to effectively do the things that we want to do, what it's going to cost us, what inputs, what resources are needed, and then at the end of the day, what kind of money we might generate in return. So if you're trying to do some enterprise planning, one of the one of the places to start is the enterprise planning webpage. The OSU has an extension budget webpage, which has budgets for mostly commodity stuff, but we do have things like meat goats. We're working on a cut flower budget. We have blackberries, strawberries, different fruits and vegetable tomatoes. So there are some fruits and vegetable budgets, and then some livestock budgets. And as you think about these budgets, they're um, not a perfect tool in the sense that they are as good as how you use them and what you put into them, but they are updated annually with all of the market cost for every input, for labor, those types of things, and they're updated by economists who are studying these things and putting the most current numbers that they have into this spreadsheet. And then the actual variables that you can manipulate with your own information, like what is your what is your cost of labor? How much are you paying out in labor? You can update with how much you think you're going to produce. And so as you update and modify the budget, it actually in real time will paint the picture of what your bottom line will be. And so then you can start as you play with these tools and you get good at working with these tools, you can get an understanding with for each enterprise that you have within your farmer ranch operation, which ones are making you money, if that's a priority, and which ones are losing you money. And you get a very clear sense of projecting. This is not, I wouldn't say this is a great tool for real time, but it's a great tool for projecting and planning. So as you're thinking about expansion, for instance, maybe you've been doing vegetables and you want to add cut flowers and you want to start trying to sell some flowers at farmers market, or some other enterprise, you want to start doing honey. This would give you a tool for beginning to put in some of the variables and to project what that might do for your operation. Um, so I encourage you to check out the enterprise budget tools if you're at the point of thinking about diversifying, expanding your operation, or you just want to get a better sense of the individual units of production on your farm or ranch. The next question I ask people is, and I think this is the one that people find the most challenging, but also have maybe the most questions about, is how are you going to fund your operation? Um, Most of us are not independently um, wealthy to the point where we just want to blow a bunch of money on a farm or ranch hobby. Now, we certainly are going to have some upfront costs that we have to account for, and we probably many of us are spending our own personal money from family funds to get started. But that's not always sustainable, and so we've got to figure out a way for the farm or ranch to at least break even or pay for itself in most cases. And then for many of us, the goal would be to actually yield some income. Maybe we want to have the ability to step away from an outside career early, or we want to supplement the family income so that there's just a little bit of extra money that's coming in. And so whatever those priorities are, you have to think about how you're going to fund the cost of getting started. And so there are a number of financial resources available to support beginning farmers and ranchers. A lot of programs exist. And so I mentioned the Farm Service Agency, and that is here. The USDA is really the federal service for supporting beginning farmers and ranchers, and there's the Farm Service Agency, which is a branch of the USDA. Farm Service Agency is, like I said earlier, the front door of the USDA and the many dozens of different departments and programs that operate under the USDA umbrella. The two that beginning farmers and ranchers are probably going to have the most connection to are going to be both the FSA and the NRCS. And so once you've established records with the FSA, you become able to start talking with them about their various loans and support programs. And then you also become eligible to start working with agencies like the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And the NRCS has a lot of grant or what we would call cost share programs that can support your operation in any sort of conservation practices or activities that you might want to implement. So let's say you want to do less tillage, or you want to convert your vegetable garden over to drip irrigation, or you want a high tunnel so you can do some season extension of your vegetable production over into the winter months. Any of those types of practices could be eligible for some of the Natural Resource Conservation Service programs, and we'll talk about some of those in a minute. Farm credit is a national credit system for agriculture. Every state has some sort of farm credit agency. Here in Oklahoma, we have two. We have the Farm Credit of Western Oklahoma, and then we have Oklahoma Ag Credit that operates mostly on the eastern half of the state, and then Farm Credit of Western Oklahoma on the western half of the state. And they operate much like a traditional lender or bank, but they only do ag farm related lending. And so they're very used to working with small scale producers, small farm and ranch, family ranch operations, and in a way that maybe a community bank or a normal bank isn't used to operating. Um, and so certainly for getting access to credit for any sort of agricultural enterprise, they're a good place to look. And then you've also got the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry, which is our state agency for agriculture, and they also offer a variety of grant and loan services to support beginning producers. So we'll talk about some of those. I think it's important, though, to mention the difference between grants and loans, and I think there's often some confusion here. Grants are going to be the types of programs that don't require repayment. Unfortunately, there's nothing with money comes without some sort of strings attached, and so we think about grants and we're like, oh, that's free money, right? That's money that I don't have to pay back. And yes, that's the case, but often grants are going to be very limited in terms of exactly what you can spend the money on. And they're often going to require some sort of reporting, some sort of giving back in education, something like that as a stipulation of you receiving those funds. A cost share program is very similar to a grant, but it probably has um, less strings attached than a traditional grant, but you have to front the money. And so most of the USDA programs are going to operate as cost share programs in the sense that, like, if let's say you were to get a high tunnel structure to grow seasonally extend your growing for vegetables or whatnot, you would have to front the cost of that structure, and then it would be reimbursed to you to cover that. And so that's how a cost share works. Sometimes cost shares will also include some sort of matching structure where you get reimbursed up to a certain point, but you're required to cover a portion of that cost. And then loans, we're all familiar with those. Those are going to require a repayment on some sort of term with interest and a payback period. And those are going to have really the least amount of stipulations or requirements in terms of how you spend the money and what it has to be used for. But you do have to pay that back with interest. And so each of those comes with their own pros and with their own cons. And it's just important to think about all of that before you sign on the dotted line for anything that has to do with finances. Um, any questions? I'm going to pause for just a second and just check because I haven't been looking at the chat. Yes, we will provide slides at the end, and so it's a good question. We will do that. Just looking to see if we had any questions in the chat there. Doesn't look like we do. If you do, feel free to interject with putting something in the chat or even unmute yourself and ask a question. I'd be glad to chat about something if something is worth pausing for. So the producer grant programs that I'd like to highlight to you, there are grants, lots and lots and lots and lots of grants out there. So you can probably find a grant for almost anything. But I think it's really important to do your homework and to make sure that you are trying to match yourself with a grant that's going to be it's not going to waste your time, one that you actually have a chance of getting, and one that is going to um, provide you with the funds and resources you need to benefit from that. And so one of the programs that I think is most effective for beginning producers and small scale farmers and ranchers here in Oklahoma is the ODAFF AEDP grant that I talked about. That stands for Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry Ag Enhancement and Diversification Program. And so they have a grant program that operates on a quarterly basis. So it'd be January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. So just last week we completed the last cycle for 2025. But if you're interested, the next opportunity to apply would be January 1st of 2026. And they have these categories here. So there's a farm diversification category, which is basically any of you that told me you're currently doing something. If you have an interest or a need to expand and diversify what you're doing, maybe you're going to add livestock for the first time, or you're going to add cut flower production or bees, and you haven't done that in the past. The farm diversification one is a great program for you to consider. And basically, you just make the case through their very simple 5 or 6 page grant application. Why diversifying into this new product or new element of your farm or ranch operation is going to benefit you. So you can talk about how it's going to give you access to new markets, or it's going to give you more opportunity to engage with your customer base and sell them new things. So you just talk about the benefits of that to you and to your farm, and then what resources you need to do that. And so that's one that I've helped many producers access. They have a bunch of other categories as well. If you wanted to do some sort of educational event or conduct some research on your farm, they have some funding to do that and support that. If you want to establish some sort of agritourism, like a U-pick or a pumpkin patch or something like that, there's support for that. And then this one does have the age 45 or under stipulation unless you're a veteran. So if you're a veteran, the age stipulation goes away. Otherwise, they have an age 45 or younger grant for young and beginning producers that basically is starting from the ground floor. You could come in and say, I have, little or no farm or ranch experience, but I just inherited this farmland. Here's my vision for what I'm trying to do. I need these resources to get started, and this category would fund something like that. And so if you're interested in any of these, I encourage you to visit with Hannah, and then she can loop me in, and her and I can work with you to prepare for one of these. But we've successfully helped dozens and dozens of producers apply and get funding for these. We have a webinar that we did earlier this spring, and I have a link that I'll share with you for that. But it's an hour-long video with Jason Harvey, who is the coordinator for this program at the state level. And he talks about all the ins and outs, all the nuances, answers all the questions you might have about this program, how to get started, how to apply, all of that in that video. And so if you're interested, that would be what I would say to do first, is watch that video. And then certainly Hannah and I can help fill in the gaps and any questions you have from there. There are other grants out there, and these are just two examples. There's the SARE grants, which stands for Sustainable Ag Research and Education. And the SARE program really supports producers and people that are innovating in some sort of sustainable agriculture space. And so, if you've got something that you're doing or you want to try out on your farm or ranch, maybe you want to do some sort of um, new setup with where you're chopping your pasture up into different paddocks and you're doing some sort of really managed grazing and you're using electric fencing, or perhaps you want to try some sort of innovative non-chemical approach to pest control. They will fund those types of projects for producers and something you can look into. And then this is an example just of what I would call like an association or like a private agency grant. There are a number of these out there, and some they kind of come and go depending on resources that are available. But if you're doing livestock, specifically cattle, and you live in the southwestern U.S., Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and into the Southwest, there's an opportunity for young and beginning producers that are trying to get into the beef industry to apply for their um, young producer leadership grant. And so something to look into. I helped a producer here in Oklahoma access this, and he was able to um, size up his herd and to get some cold storage to do direct to consumer marketing of beef, and a really successful project that came out of support from that grant. We talked about cost share programs, and so I'll just highlight two that you may hear about. These are two programs of the NRCS, or the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Yeah, interested in the video I see in the chat of the ODAFF EDP grants, EDP grants. We'll definitely share that in just a moment, and I'll put maybe even a link to that in the chat here in just a second. Um, The cost share programs that you'll encounter with the Natural Resource Conservation Service are both the CSP, or Conservation Stewardship Program, and then the EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program. I think most small scale beginning producers are probably going to have the best opportunity of intersecting with the EQIP program. This would be the program that supports funding for the high tunnels and supports funding for various kind of small scale conservation practices. And so they'll actually, if you identify uh, a need or some sort of conservation opportunity on your property, they will partner with you to help support funding that. And the best opportunity to learn more about this, we actually have a YouTube video webinar on this as well, but the best opportunity is to connect with your local USDA service center. And so every county has a service center, and you can connect with them, and they'll give you some information about these specific programs and whether you might be a good candidate for that. If you are interested in getting capital in the form of a loan, there are a number of loan programs, and I'll briefly kind of skim over some of those so that you're just kind of familiar with the concepts. But there's a loan assistance tool that the USDA has put together, and you can find it online. You can go to farmers.gov, do a Google search for loan assistance tool USDA, and this page will come up. We've also got the QR code right here. And what this will do is it's kind of like an online little interactive tool to you kind of work through a set of questions, and you can kind of determine whether you're going to be eligible for the loan. You can look at kind of current loan rates and kind of get a sense of what it would look like if you entered into some sort of loan agreement with the FSA, the Farm Service Agency. So that's a great tool is you're kind of flirting with the idea or thinking through whether it might be for you, is to go to that loan assistance tool. Just a quick overview, if you are thinking about going to your USDA service center and you're thinking about getting established to be eligible for USDA programs, the first step is having an appointment with the service center. If you are going to get a farm tax, sorry, not a farm, a farm ID number, a FSA farm number, then you will need to have some documents. They're going to ask you for either a deed showing that you own that land that you're farming on, or some sort of lease agreement that says that you have rights to that farm site for at least 5 years. And if you're enrolling in some of the other programs, like a loan program or something like that, then they're probably going to ask to see, some bank records and other personal identification records. So just be prepared for that. Um, and like I said, it's important to be thinking about your vision and your long-term goals and having a business plan. And so some of the resources I shared earlier are going to be really important kind of first steps to doing that. If you decide that you are wanting to maybe acquire a new piece of property, some farmland comes up near you, or you're wanting to get out onto a larger piece of property, the FSA does have what are called farm ownership loans. And they have both a 100% FSA loan financing option or a joint financing option. The Farm Service Agency is known as what's called a lender of last resort. And so if you have poor credit or you can't qualify for traditional financing, the FSA will work with you and offers quite reduced rates compared to market rates that will help you to acquire farm land if you want. And so they'll loan you up to $600,000 over a 40-year term, no down payment required at a 3.75 interest rate for their farm ownership loans. These interest rates change, so don't hold me to this number. They're constantly going up and down, but they tend to be quite substantially reduced compared to like a market mortgage rate for a home. The joint financing option is where most people find themselves, and that is because maybe they have enough financial standing that they don't need an exclusive FSA loan, and so they might do a joint financing, and the FSA would loan um, basically 45% of the the note. You would have to have a 5% down payment, and then the primary lender, which in this case would be like Ag Credit or somebody like that, would loan the other 50%. And so there are joint financing options. I show you this just to show you that if you find a piece of property that has, that you're like, this is my dream farm or ranch property, and I could do this or that out there. There are pathways to helping you acquire farmland, and to do it with a modest interest rate over a period of years that can help kind of lower that monthly mortgage payment. They have what I think they refer to them as microloans for beginning producers. These are those kinds of loans or lines of credit that are really helpful if you've already got an established farm and ranch, and you're just needing a little bit of infusion of cash for maybe some infrastructure upgrades, some equipment, um, just to kind of float some needed expenses that are going to come up. And so they'll loan you up to $50,000 and can do it over up to 7-year terms, and with really good rates as well. And so something to consider if you're just needing some cash for a specific project. You don't have to go with a huge amount like you saw with the farm ownership loans. They'll loan you those smaller amounts for specific kind of short time-bound projects. They also have youth loans. These will go up to $10,000. Think of these as kids that are between 10 to 20 years old. Maybe they're trying to do a 4-H project, or they're doing some sort of you know business activity where they're trying to they need a little bit of infusion of cash to do some sort of entrepreneurship activity. This is a great pathway for them to do that. And one thing I will say though is that when you engage with the USDA in one of these programs, that starts your 10-year time period as a beginning farmer or rancher. And so if a 10-year-old potentially started with them and then they continued to over a 10-year period, they could time out and be ineligible for beginning farmer rancher programs at age 20. That's very uncommon, but just know that that's kind of starts your clock in terms of your years of experience with the USDA. Here's a link to the webinar recordings. So last spring, March through May, we did a webinar series, and The topics from this webinar series really emerged through the input that we were receiving on our OSU Extension Beginning Farmer and Rancher website, and all of the as people were signing up for the newsletter, all of the feedback that we were getting. We got a lot of great information, but one of the themes was that a lot of people had some interest in terms of just some of the financial um, and business elements of farming and ranching. And so we tried to make that the focus of this first webinar series. We'll probably do another one next spring that might be more production oriented, might have some more horticulture based topics. This one was very focused on business planning, enterprise budgeting, grants, loans, those types of things, record keeping. And all of those resources are cataloged on the OSU Ag Econ YouTube page. And so this will take you to this playlist, this QR code here, if you'd like to find the videos. When you go to this playlist, it will look something like this when you click on that QR code. And so there's a playlist of all the different videos. And you'll just kind of click through by topic to find the one that you want to look for. And I believe the ODAFF grant and loan one is clearly labeled. It should be number 5 or 6, I believe. But if you give me just a minute, I can put that link in the chat once we're done here. Another thing I'd like to bring to your attention is our online classes. I think there's a number of these that could be helpful resources for beginning farmers and ranchers. Our market gardening class series is a 5 or 6 part course that walks you through kind of all that you need to know to get set up and prepared to be a market vegetable grower. So if you want to grow produce and sell it at farmers market, you want to set up some sort of, farm stand, something like that. This walks you through a lot of the production elements of what you need to know for that. And then one of the final modules kind of talks through marketing and sales channels and things like that. Periodically, we have the opportunity to offer a code that will get you these for free, but they do have a small price to create a login and take these. And so if you're interested, you can reach out to Hannah or myself, and we can help you access those courses. Outside of vegetables, there's things like our backyard chickens, intro to beekeeping, managing wildlife, things like that that might be of interest to you as well. And those are all there on that online course catalog. Some other ones here, some livestock ones, farm and ranch record keeping. So there's a wide range of online courses that I think would be pertinent resources and information to just about any beginning farmer, rancher, small scale producer. Uh, you probably are familiar with this resource as well, but I always like to bring this up. I think that the services that we provide through our county offices in the form of soil, water, and forage testing, plant and insect ID are really valuable. And so if you aren't taking advantage of these, I encourage you to look into it. We will offer soil testing, forage analysis for livestock feeds. Um, We'll even do household drinking well water tests, livestock drinking water tests, and irrigation water tests. And so these all are really helpful as you're thinking about some of the planning and also mitigating and addressing some of the challenges that you might encounter on your site. And so reach out to Hannah if you aren't familiar with these, and she can help you understand how to do this. But if you have a home well that you're drinking water from and you've never tested the water, it's well worth doing a basic test. The costs are pretty inexpensive, and it's a nice resource. One last thing that I want to make all of you aware of is one of the programs that I'm a part of managing through our beginning farmer and rancher extension program is this farmer apprenticeship pilot program that we're launching in 2026. We have a number of different projects that our program is running, but this one here I'm really excited about because it's really, I think, a unique thing in Oklahoma at least. It's going to give us the opportunity to pilot the concept of putting new or prospective Specialty crop growers, so people that are interested in growing vegetables, cut flowers, fruits, things like that. So it won't have much of a livestock emphasis, though some of the farm sites will have livestock. The emphasis will be primarily on specialty crop production. Um, and we're going to take a cohort of people. We're hoping for about 15 that we can place around the state. And we are going to match them with a farm site and ask them to spend 8 months basically working on a schedule that works well with their schedule and the farm site schedule. They're going to work at least 500 hours or up to 500 hours over the course of an 8 month period and get kind of that firsthand growing gardening experience. And so we already have a cohort of farm host sites for 2026 season that have agreed to participate. And then right now we're accepting applications for the participants. And so if you know of anybody, there's no age requirements. You have to be 18 or older. So you have to be an adult. But there's no, we're not looking for a specific age category. You can be employed full time as long as you have the flexibility to make this work in your schedule somehow. And so here's a little bit of information about the program. This QR code here will take you to the application. And I would really appreciate anyone that is willing to share this and spread the word about this program. We're trying to get as many applicants as we can, so we have a broad pool of people to select from. But we're going to be piloting it over a 2-year period. So we'll do the 2026 growing season, and then we're going to try it again in the 27 growing season, evaluate it, and see, what we learned from this. The program will start in March of 26 and go through October of 26. And the idea is that we're going to match participants, what I call like tire kickers or prospective producers with established producers. And so it gives the participant the opportunity to really get a work-based experiential learning type of um, deep experience, not just learning from a textbook or from somebody presenting some information, but they get the hands-on experience of growing over a season with somebody who's done it and is established enough to be able to share knowledge without having to take on some of the risk or the cost that they might have to if they just jumped in themselves. And so it gives them kind of a safe, curated learning environment to learn about direct to consumer and specialty crop production. It's going to, ideally that if you spread out 500 hours over a 8 month period, it's about 16 and a half to 20 hours a week is what we would expect somebody to work. And so that will be kind of negotiated with based on their availability and the needs of each farm. And so, it doesn't have to look like, it might be that you work on the weekends or in the afternoons and evenings or 2 days a week or a few hours over the whole week. That will depend on the person's availability and the needs of each individual farm site. So I encourage anybody to apply, even if they may feel like they may not have the daytime flexibility. We can work through some of that to understand how to make it work. Each farm site is going to provide an educative working and learning environment to engage the participants in all aspects of the farm and ranch business. So they're going to kind of pull the curtains back a little bit and give the participants the kind of behind the scenes look at both the good and the bad, the ups and the downs, the highs, the lows, the challenges, and the opportunities that come along with being a specialty crop producer. We'll have stipends that we can pay to the participants. Don't hold me to these numbers, but this is just an example here. Roughly $1,000 a month over the 8 month period. And we'll also be paying a stipend to each of the farm sites that is participating. So with that, I threw a lot at you over a lot of different topics. I'm going to stop my presentation. I'm going to take some time for some questions and discussion, and then I will also be here to share a link to any of the specific resources that people may have questions about. I can do that in the chat. So thank you.
I have a question for you, Josh.
Sure.
On the assistantship program, I know you mentioned direct to consumer and crop possibilities. Are there any potential possibilities for prospective livestock producers through that program?
Yeah, there are a few of the farm sites that also have cattle and goats and sheep and chickens. And so if that's a key interest, I would say we would try to match somebody with that would have those elements as well. The the main the main I would say the majority of farm sites are going to be very vegetable crop specific, but not all. And so if livestock or diversified, having livestock and crop production is something you're interested in, we can try to match you with somebody that's going to fit that. But we do hope to offer in future iterations like next year, well, I say next year in 27 and 28, we hope to maybe have a couple pathways where if you're very focused on, say just livestock production and that's what you're interested in, then we can try to pair you with a rancher that could help you through that. And so that's under development. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Um, one of the things is yeah, location specific. So we have farms spread out across the state, but we won't be able to match everybody based on, just going to be based on who we get to apply, where the farm sites are, those types of things. But if you do apply, um, there's a good shot that you'll have the opportunity to participate. So
Awesome. We did get one question in chat so far. From Sean says, if my property has a lot of cedars, what grant could you direct me to for, I'm assuming he's looking at like eastern red cedar eradication.
yeah, that's a good question, Sean. I think um, there's some opportunities that you could take advantage of. Most of the eastern red cedar removal is going to be something that would be a natural resource conservation service, or even maybe your local conservation district might be able to be a place to start to guide you through understanding some of that. Hannah can share those local resources with you depending on where you're at. If you're in Tulsa County, um, Hannah can share those resources, but they're going to have programs like the NRCS has programs specifically designed to cost share with producers the cost of doing the removal. So you'll have to either hire it out or do that work yourself probably. But you can hire a dozer or somebody to come in and do the removal, and then they'll share that cost with you on a per acre basis is typically what they do. So depending on how many acres you have and how many cedars, you'll get a payment on a per acre basis of removal.
Great question. And I did want to touch briefly on, while we're waiting for some more questions to come through to give you guys time to ask more questions. On our soil, water, and forage testing, that Josh talked about a little bit. Your local county extension office, whether that's me in Tulsa County, or if you're in another county across the state, we take those soil, water, and forage samples in. We can take currently, we've got plans in the future to open up to accept credit cards, but currently we can take cash or check for those. And we did have a slight price increase on some of our soil sample testing. We were $10 and that price has been since 1995. So we just increased those this year to $15 for a routine soil test. And that will tell you the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and pH of the soil, whether it's for ornamental flower beds, cut flowers, garden beds, for your pasture, for your lawn, or anything and everything in between. We can tailor those recommendations and results to what you need to do in that area. Our soil test results will talk about what fertilizer is needed, how much to apply, how often to apply, and give any recommendations on maybe things you should think about doing for the future if we need to add more organic matter, whatever the case may be. So a great service that OSU Extension offers, and typically your results come back to you. Here in Tulsa County, we email the results back out to you in 10 to 14 business days. And at OSU, we say typically those results are good for 3 years. So you could follow those same recommendations for 3 years, unless there is some special circumstance, like a really, really high pH or really, really low pH that we may want to monitor a little more often. And Tina, great question. That brings me to my next thing. If we're collecting a soil sample, Again, whether it's for your lawn, garden, pasture, flower beds, raised beds, whatever the case may be, the collection process is the same. We have soil probes here in the office that help make it easier for you to collect that soil sample. You can come to our Tulsa County office or any other county office across the state, and you can borrow a soil probe from us. And it's just a metal T-bar that's hollow in the center, and it has a step on it, so you can put your foot on it, push it into the ground, and it'll collect a core from the soil at the perfect depth that we need it, which is typically about 6 inches deep. You will use that soil probe, and in the area that you want tested, let's say it's your garden bed, your vegetable garden bed. In that entire garden area, we want you to collect 15 to 20 random samples using that core. So you could do an X pattern, you could do a completely randomized pattern. The more random it is, the better representative it is of that area and the soil, because it differs quite a bit. Potentially can differ. It may be pretty uniform, but a lot of times it'll be a little bit different, whether it's soil texture varies, nutrient availability varies, even the pH may vary within those areas. So that's how to get a good soil sample. And like I mentioned, you do that for any area that you want tested, whether it's your pasture, lawn, garden, anything like that. And once you've collected those 15 to 20 core samples, you will mix those up in a bucket, get all of those 15 to 20 small samples you collected mixed up, and that mixed that mixed representative sample is what we want you to bring to our office. We need at least 10 ounces to send off and get tested. So normally we like to tell people in our office that looks like an Eskimo Joe's cup full of soil is almost the perfect amount. So, and when you bring that with us, you can bring, or when you bring that to us, you can bring your $15 with you. We'll send it off, and then we'll email your results to you, like I mentioned, 10 to 14 business days. And then on our forage and water testing, similar collection processes. Our water tests are around $18. Our forage tests start at $8. Our most common forage test is $14. And again, we can take cash or check for those. You don't need to make an appointment to come to your local extension office to bring those in. You can come in anytime and drop those off during open office hours.
Catherine had a question about resources for people that are aging or needing to lessen their physical demands. I shared a link there to the USDA's Agribility website. We don't actually have an active program here in Oklahoma. The way that USDA Agribility works is they have resources that are available freely to people across the US, but then they do fund kind of specific state-based initiatives and activities. And we used to have an agribility program here in Oklahoma until about 10 years ago. And then it didn't get renewed for funding. But if the funding becomes available again, the state of Oklahoma through OSU Extension does have plans to develop some specific agribility programming and initiatives here in Oklahoma. And so it would be things like, there'd be specific educational opportunities for you and resources specific to folks here in Oklahoma. But this resource is kind of general information for producers across the country that might be able to benefit from that.
Do we have any other questions? Not seeing any in the chat. If you don't have any more questions at this time, that's okay. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email or my office phone number, 918-746-3725. If there's any of these resources that you're wanting to utilize today, please reach out to Josh or I, and we can share those with you. Or if you have any follow-up questions, or maybe any situation specific questions that you might have for me, I'm happy to help with those as well. And again, we recorded this, so we will share that out via email once Zoom downloads it to the cloud and shares that link with me. I'll share that out to you guys. But other than that, if you guys don't have any more questions, we will go ahead and conclude this program. Josh, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Mhm.
Very thankful for you to share all those great resources and exciting potential programs that may be coming up soon. And then too, if you guys are signed up for the rest of the classes in this series, we will meet again next Monday at 9 a.m. again, virtually via Zoom for backyard chicken. So I'm excited for that class as well. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a happy Monday.
Thanks, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, for letting me join you.
Thank you.